So let's talk about something that feels like pure science fiction, but actually has its roots deep in our own history. Could a robot have rights? And maybe more importantly, should it?
Okay, to really get into this, the first thing you've got to understand is that this isn't really a tech question about circuits or code. Nope. It's a legal and philosophical question that all boils down to one single, really powerful concept: personhood.
I mean, if you've seen the movie Her, this scene just nails it. It feels real, right? It makes you feel something. And it really gets you thinking, what does it even mean to be a person when the lines get this blurry?
And that feeling, that's what takes us from a fictional movie right into a real-world courtroom. Because before we can even begin to talk about rights, we have to figure out what the law is even talking about.
You see, legally speaking, personhood isn't about being human or having a body. It's a status. It's a label the law gives an entity that says, okay, you can have rights, like owning property, but you also have duties, like being held responsible for your actions. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The law already has two kinds of persons. You've got natural persons. That's you and me. But for centuries, the law has also had this idea of artificial persons. Yep, for practical reasons, we've been giving legal personhood to things like corporations and even ships. So the idea that only humans can be persons was never really true to begin with. So if the circle already includes non-human, non-living things like a company, well, where else has it expanded? The first big push came from the animal kingdom. So let me tell you about Sandra. She was an orangutan at the Buenos Aires Zoo, and her case forced a court to ask a really deep question. Was she just a thing, a piece of property? Or, after all those years, was she something more? And the court's decision was, wow, it was a bombshell. They ruled that Sandra couldn't be seen as an object. They said she had to be recognized as a subject of rights, and they stated very clearly that non-human animals are entitled to have them.
So there it was, in black and white. Sandra was officially declared a non-human person. In that moment, the circle of who or what deserves legal protection got just a little bit wider.
But it didn't stop with individual animals. The next jump was even bigger. The circle was about to expand to include the massive, silent, living systems that we all depend on. And I mean, look how fast this idea took off. In 2008, Ecuador literally writes the rights of nature into its constitution. Fast forward to 2017, and suddenly New Zealand gives an entire river, the Wanganui River, the full legal rights of a person. And that same year, a court in India does the exact same thing for the Ganges and Yamuna rivers. So what's the big takeaway here? The circle of personhood now protected not just a single being, but an entire ecosystem. The whole conversation shifted. It wasn't just about can it think or can it feel anymore. It became about what do we as a society decide is valuable enough to protect. And that brings us right back to where we started. If animals can be non-human persons, and even rivers can have legal rights, well, what about the machine? It feels like the next logical step, right? So when philosophers try to figure this out, they usually come at it from two different directions. The first is the properties approach. It asks, what is this thing? Does it have properties like consciousness or intelligence or free will? But the other side, the relational approach, asks a totally different question. It asks, how do we act around it? What kind of relationship do we have, and what responsibilities come with that? The properties approach, that's where you get the famous Turing test. You've probably heard of it. The idea is pretty simple. If you're talking to a machine and you can't tell it's a machine, if you think it's a person, then it passes. It's all about how it behaves. Can it fool us? But then you get this brilliant counter-argument called the Chinese room. Imagine a guy in a room who doesn't speak a word of Chinese. He just has a giant rule book. Someone slides a question in Chinese under the door. He looks up the symbols in his book, finds the right response, and slides it back out. To the person outside, it looks like he understands Chinese perfectly. He passes the Turing test. But does he understand a single word? No, he's just manipulating symbols. And that's the big problem. Is a machine actually thinking, or is it just a really, really good mimic? Okay, so we've got these two big ideas, and they kind of clash. So where do we go from here? How do we start to redraw that circle for today?
Well, maybe the most important insight is realizing this isn't a choice. It's not properties versus relations. A truly modern way of thinking about this has to look at both. It's not an either-or question.
And that's where this idea of a multispectral framework comes in. Instead of getting stuck on one thing, it tells us to look at the whole picture. Consider what a thing is, but also how we relate to it. Acknowledge the world we all share, and, this is key, stay open to the idea that our definition of personhood can and should evolve. And maybe most importantly, it says that rights don't have to be all or nothing. Different beings might just deserve different kinds of rights.
So, in the end, we've been asking, can a robot have rights? But maybe that's not the most interesting question. Maybe the real question is a mirror. As we draw and redraw that circle of personhood, as we decide who or what gets to be on the inside, what does our answer say about us? What does it reveal about our own values?